tax that President Biden mentioned, a tax on oil companies' profits? Are you for that?
I haven't looked at exactly what he wants to do. I think the fact that oil companies are making huge profits and having stock buybacks right now, while average person here is paying nearly $4 a gallon, I think that's wrong. And I think we need to crack down. We need to crack down on that.
We're going to move on.
From prison, and a lot of people fall into that nonviolent category, including drug traffickers, including drug possession, including people who distribute child pornography. So all those people should be let out?
Well, what I'm talking about here is marijuana crimes. I think we need to legalize marijuana. I think...
Well, you said all nonviolent criminals out, for sure.
I'm sorry?
You said
all nonviolent criminals out, for
I
sure.
think the focus is marijuana crimes, in my mind, right? We spend, this may be the stupidest expenditure of federal money and in public taxpayer money in the history of our country. You get caught with marijuana, then you end up in prison. And that is insane for us. We should tax the marijuana and we should put it into addiction treatment. We should use it to keep fentanyl and these hardcore drugs out of our country, out of our society. We should invest in the shop class. We should invest into early childhood education. There's so many better ways to spend this money than locking somebody up for marijuana crimes. And especially when white and black people use marijuana equally, black people are 6 times more likely to go to prison. Like, that's an unfair system. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense to me. A story or two every single week of people, women, who are in this tragic situation. Their life becomes at risk. They have to go to Illinois. Now, J.D. Vance wants a national abortion ban, and he wouldn't be happy with these people going to Illinois. He wants them to have to get a passport and go to Canada. He called rape inconvenient.
This is after 15 weeks, is what he's talked about. We're going to ask him all these questions.
After 15 weeks.
So what's your number? What you say you don't want it afterward? Is there a number?
I think we go back to Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was in the third term. In the third term of Roe v. Wade, you could only do it if there was some kind of medical emergency. We don't want J.D. Vance and Ted Cruz and all these guys in the doctor's office.
Before we jump in, I would just offer that the campaign Tim Ryan is running is the way to win in a red state like Ohio. He's reaching the voters where they are and not being afraid to defend his positions in what could otherwise be perceived as hostile territory. And here's why that's a no-brainer. Because the Democrats' positions are more popular. You don't have to be afraid to go into a Fox News town hall and advocate on behalf of reproductive choice, because guess what? Those people also support choice. You don't have to be afraid to go into a Fox News town hall and advocate on behalf of fighting price gouging by oil companies, because guess what? Those people also oppose price gouging by oil companies. On issue after issue after issue, from reproductive rights to climate to taxing the rich to healthcare to a minimum wage to common sense gun safety reforms like universal background checks, it's the Democrats' position that is more popular among people from both sides of the political spectrum. And let's just be honest here, if Democrats aren't willing to defend those positions, then they're ceding that ground to a Republican Party that has proven that it'll lie and distort and obfuscate the facts. So if we're not showing up to tell the truth, how can we expect the viewers to know the truth? Are we going to trust that the Democrats are getting a fair shake by Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Jesse Waters? Getting a fair shake by J.D. Vance and Dr. Oz and Donald Trump? We can't complain about losing an information war and simultaneously refuse to fight it. Now, as for this town hall, Tim Ryan's first major applause line was when he called for cracking down on oil companies that are raking in huge profits while Americans are paying higher and higher prices at the pump. Now, let's be clear here. This is a problem and it exists. Let's not pretend that those prices aren't hurting everyone. So the question becomes, A, who is to blame, and B, what's being done to fix it? In terms of who's to blame, the answer is right there in front of us. Only days ago, Shell reported quarterly profits of $9.5 billion, ExxonMobil of almost $20 billion. They're public, and so we don't have to look around and guess who the culprit is, because it's right there in black and white. And so in terms of who's to blame, Tim Ryan is spot on by calling out these oil companies. But on the right. Who are the Republicans blaming? Well, they're blaming Joe Biden. Now, in reality, the president can do very little to impact oil prices, aside from releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which Biden has done, and pressuring OPEC to increase supply, which Biden has also done. But Republicans are so hell-bent on notching a cheap political win that they're actually taking the attention off of those oil companies and instead training it onto Joe Biden. And in doing so, they're not only blocking our attempt to do something about it by pressuring these companies to lower prices, they're actually offering those companies a permission structure to keep doing it. They're giving them an out. Republicans are telling these companies that they're on their side and that they're going to run defense for them by scapegoating the Democrats. The GOP has aligned itself with profiteering corporations because they're more concerned about power for themselves than actually protecting the people who they were elected to serve. And as for the question on what's being done to fix it, just this week, Biden proposed a windfall tax on oil companies. Democrats passed legislation out of the House to prevent oil companies from gouging consumers at the pump. It passed 217 to 207, with every single Republican voting against it. As I mentioned before, Biden's also done releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and he's spoken to OPEC to increase production. Meanwhile, I'd ask, what have Republicans done? What have they proposed? While they're quick to wail about gas prices on an endless loop every single day on Fox News and OAN and Newsmax, have they come up with a single solution? Or are they continuing to just cash checks from the same exact oil companies that are posting those record profits right now? I'd tell you the answer, but I think you already know. So Tim Ryan is right, and the people applauding him know that, but they should recognize that until and unless Democrats have a governing majority in Congress, which is to say 52 senators and a simple majority in the House, there will still be enough Republicans to protect those predatory oil companies making off like bandits at your expense at the pump. Another major applause line for Ryan was calling for Roe to be reinstated. Republicans, including people like Bret Baier, are trying to land some type of a gotcha on Democrats by making them pick a number of weeks. Here's the facts. According to the CDC, almost 99% of abortions occur before 21 weeks. Republicans love to frame this as liberals just nonchalantly killing babies with days to go before they deliver, as casually as they choose a Starbucks latte, but that's not what's happening. The vast majority of abortions are happening before 21 weeks. And so think about why those last 1% of women are getting abortions after 21 weeks. The reasons range from the women not knowing they were pregnant, to fetal anomalies, to health risks for their mother. And so banning abortion after an arbitrary date isn't going to stop the kinds of hysterical reasons that Republicans fearmonger about. It's just going to impact the 1% of women who are already dealing with a major trauma. Again, 99% of abortions are happening early anyway. The only so-called mid or late-term abortions are the result of some major difficulty. That's what's being impacted. Republicans are only making the most severe cases even more difficult because they don't understand what the fuck it is that they're trying to restrict. And let's be clear, the majority of this country agrees. 70% of Americans support Roe. That's a majority of both Democrats and Republicans. That room that Tim Ryan is speaking in supports Roe. But it's incumbent upon those people to recognize that if they do not elect Democrats, Republicans will take the single most extreme position on Roe that they can find. And this isn't just me fear-mongering. Here's J.D. Vance at the same town hall right after Tim Ryan finished speaking, reaffirming his position against Roe.
He said you want to ban abortion in Ohio and across this country. Is that true?
Look, I'm pro-life. I am pro-life.
So I hope those people recognize that it's not an affront to your identity to vote for a Democrat if you voted for a Republican in the past, knowing full well that the issue of bodily autonomy is on the line in this election. This goes beyond party, it's about personal freedom. And finally, the last applause line here is when Tim Ryan makes the case for legalizing marijuana, and he touches upon the most important part. This is an economic issue. Here's the thing, it costs money, our tax dollars, to lock these people up. That's money out of our pockets in the form of better schools, better roads, better addiction treatment, better anything, and instead funneled into the prison industrial complex to lock up people for doing something that no one in their right mind in 2022 would even consider a crime. I'm in California, there are weed stores all over the place, and the people who partake aren't any more criminal than someone who might enjoy a glass of wine at night. This is about nothing more than criminalizing people, disproportionately people of color, and imposing yet another unpopular agenda onto people who don't want it. So again, I'm glad this audience recognizes that, but more important than the applause is these people showing up on election day or before and sending a message to the GOP that they're not entitled to their votes just because they voted Republican in the past, and that this election should be about the candidates and the issues, not just blind loyalty to a political party. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.